How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Boylei Hobby Time. I was at the hobby store the other day and I found this cool snake from WizKids. It's made for D&D, but I felt like it had the right look and it was the perfect size for my Wild Western world. If you're new to this series, you may be wondering why I think that this snake is the perfect size, but it is clearly way too big for these little plastic gentlemen and their horse. In this Wild West, there are giant critters. Some are monsters that we didn't have in our Wild West, others we did, but they're just huge, including giant snakes that could swallow any of these miniature, normal-sized humans whole. For this diorama, I wanted to depict a hunting party cornering this snake in a narrow southwestern canyon, so I plotted out a rough layout on a wooden base. I found an offcut of styrofoam from my train build that had the general shape I was looking for, so I measured that out and I trimmed it down to the right width and the right depth and began carving some character into the foam with a hot wire knife. Like I said, the goal for the terrain was to resemble the rocks of the American Southwest, so I carved some striations and cracks and crevices into the foam. I also added a small nook for the snake to sit in, and on the left side of the diorama, I cut out part of an arch. Originally, I was going to have a full arch, but I decided on something else instead. I also textured up the rest of the wall to look like rock. The idea for the partial arch is that this gentleman is getting ready to crack off a large section of rock that will fall down and pin the serpent as it chases these guys off, who are the bait. It's the classic pin the giant snake with the rock as it chases the guys who are the bait trope. I then used some foam-safe superglue to stick down all the individual pieces of foam, and it was time for the terrain paste. I'm almost out of my favorite brown paint, so I added a little bit of water and that kinda helped. And after I added my Mod Podge, I tried something a little different this time. I kept it super thick to build up the terrain in all the places that I wanted, and then I thinned it down with water to a brushable consistency. And I covered the rest of the foam with that. After that was dry, I stuck down some pebbles and a few sizes of sand and locked it all in place with isopropyl alcohol and watered down white glue. I set the base aside to dry again, I tidied up my workstation, and I got ready to paint the figures. After putting on some gloves, I took them outside, I primed them with a white primer, and I began the painting. Although this snake doesn't have a rattle on its tail, I wanted to paint it to look somewhat like a rattlesnake. I painted on a loose diamond shape all the way down its back. I gave it a wash of cryptic armor shade from Citadel, brushed on some desert tan, painted the mouth and the eyes, and that was the snake done. For these monster hunting cowboys, I didn't do anything too special. I just tried to paint them in a way that made them look like your average, run-of-the-mill, wild western, rough and tumble monster hunting cowboys. Which is basically just a normal cowboy that does all the normal cowboy stuff and also hunts monsters. After the terrain was dry, I took it outside and I primed it. I've been asked why I prime the base sometimes instead of just going with the tan rock color that I had before, and the reason is mostly the sand. The sand, the rocks, and the pebbles are all different colors, and they don't have the same look as the rocks around, so by starting from the same base color, it's a lot easier to get a more unified look. So unfortunately, the power went out for a few hours due to some construction down the road. I lost my lighting for this part, so I decided to paint outside instead. I used the usual method of applying various shades of washes to the rocks, making the deeper areas a little darker. And while I was outside, I decided to take some shots of nature. After taking in that nature for a little bit, I added a few more colors to the rocks and I finished coloring up the ground. Then I dry brushed the whole thing with a desert tan, and my allergies were starting to flare up by this point, so I packed up my stuff and I went inside to wait for the power to come back. The power came back shortly after I came inside, and it was time for final assembly. I glued all the figures in place, including the snake and all the cowboys. I made sure everyone was ready for the big plan to catch the snake. I don't think it's going to work for them, but I hope for their sake that it does. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to survive this. I added some tufts of desert grass. I painted the side of the diorama with black 3.0 to minimize the surface detail, and I called it good. That is it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Huge shout out as always to my patrons. You guys are the best. Have an awesome week, everyone. I'll see you next time.